On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, we got John Chick once again from Locked On Rangers. We're talking about the series as a whole, as well as the series tying win from the other night. All that and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's another crossover episode of Locked On Lightning and Locked On Rangers. And if you are listening and paying attention, we played our music from Locked On Lightning, so you know we're coming off a Lightning win. I'm Adam Denker of Locked On Lightning, and today joining me for the crossover is none other than host of Locked On Rangers, John Chick. Now, John, I have to ask you, how you feeling? You were up 2-0 in the series. And I have to say just this out of my own personal enjoyment, because a lot of your fans, Ranger fans, have taken the pleasure. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Have taken the pleasure of reaching out to me, not only on Twitter, but as well as YouTube. And now that we're tied in the series, all I'm hearing is crickets. But how are you feeling though?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Adam, let me just say I am absolutely shocked that one fan base would, give the other fan base a hard time after going up 2-0 here. But, be that as it may, I mean, look, it does feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity. Obviously, the Rangers are up 2-0, and they have an opportunity in Game 3 to really take this series by the throat, and they're up 2-0 in that game. Couple of power play goals, and it just wasn't meant to be. And with all that said, I still do feel good. This Ranger team has been very resilient all year. They've been excellent at Madison Square Garden in the playoffs. They got still with the home ice advantage. They're going home for Game 5, and they haven't been defeated in the playoffs at home since Game 1 against Pittsburgh, and even that took 3 overtime periods. So I'm still feeling good, but it is hard not to feel like, the Rangers didn't miss an opportunity, especially in Game 3 when they had that 2-goal lead. Now, granted, they're playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. A 2-goal lead is like nothing. But still, you had a chance to really, take the upper hand there. Just weren't able to do it. But, series on, we're kind of where I think I probably would have thought we would be at the start of this series. I think maybe I would have seen, a split in New York followed by a split in Tampa rather than the home team winning all 4 games. But be that as it may, we got a best of 3 here. And that's why we do this, man. It's always a ton of fun.
Yeah, it is a ton of fun, and really, you have to admire from the Tampa Bay side of things just how good this young Ranger team is, especially that kid line, and as well as the performance from Igor Shesterkin, and I'm still surprised. I mean, given everything that we've seen, and it's been no really surprise in terms of how well Igor Shesterkin has played, but the fact that we're here going into Game 5 with, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Igor Shesterkin has been the better goaltender stats wise. Now, there's been moments where Vasilevskiy has shown his playoff performance, his Conn Smythe worthy performances from years past. What has surprised you? I mean, you've watched this guy all season long, so there really shouldn't be any surprises. But has there been any surprises with Igor throughout this series? I mean, for me at least, it's really just his ability to really weather the storm, and I think just from my perspective, that's because he's so young and he's still very much early on and premature into his NHL career. Do you feel any sort of surprise with Shesterkin?
Not really. I learned pretty quickly, after Igor Shesterkin made his debut. And of course, he put up just video game like numbers in both the KHL and the AHL. And, there's no guarantees that everything's going to translate perfectly to the NHL. But when you're putting up a goals against average of like 1, like literally 1 on the dot, I mean, that's impressive no matter what level of hockey it is. And, the Rangers have always been high on him and, thought that he was going to be a franchise type goalie. So, no, I'm not too surprised by anything. As far as, this past game, Game 4, I wouldn't say any of the goals on him. I mean, a couple of them maybe were stoppable, but when you look at the 3 goals that Tampa scored, not counting the empty netter at the end, all of them were the result of like second chance opportunities or Tampa just flat out outworking the Rangers. And that's one thing that was disappointing about this game for me is I thought there were just too many instances in this game where, unlike games 1 and 2, where I thought the Rangers were outworking Tampa kind of outworked the Rangers, and it led directly to goals in multiple instances there. So, again, I got no issue with anything that Igor Shesterkin has done in these last couple of games here. He looks every bit the part of the player that he was in the regular season. And I think he's going to be just fine going forward. And obviously, both these goalies, Adam, they're going to have a huge say in what happens the rest of the way, and certainly in Game 5 here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I picked up on something in the last game that I'm curious if you saw it as well. And I was saying on my last episode that maybe this is something that we'll see more of from Tampa in Game 5. Is a lot of the 3 of those 4 goals, obviously the 4th one being the empty netter, but 3 of those goals were all on Shesterkin's left side, on his catch and glove side. Do you think that has that been an issue at all this year with Shesterkin being a little bit weak on his left side? Just because you had the first goal and then the game winner by Palat, almost identical there. Well, in the previous game, but then you kind of
Right.
saw it here as well, a little bit here and there. Has that something that you've seen throughout the season that's been a little bit of a point of concern for you?
No, I don't think so. I haven't really noticed any glaring weakness as far as, a certain percentage of goals that he gives up being on this side or that side or
Yeah.
top shelf or 5-hole or whatever it might be. But they did actually show a stat on ESPN last night, and it's something that I think subconsciously I was aware of, but hadn't really thought about it that much. And that is that Igor has now allowed, and there was at least one in last night's game. I believe it was the second goal by Kucherov. Igor's now allowed, I think it's 12 5-hole goals so far in this playoffs. And they made a big deal about, well, that's more than any other goalie. Now, obviously, we can all figure out that that's because the Rangers, in part, have played more games than anybody else.
Yeah.
ESPN maybe can't quite think that deeply, but that's okay. But yeah, there's been a couple times where on breakaways this throughout this postseason, certain players have been able to open him up a little bit and get through the 5-hole, and we saw Kucherov do that in this game last night. And throughout the regular season, I'm so used to seeing Igor. I mentioned this on my last episode, but anytime anybody's going in one-on-one with Igor on a breakaway, I'd sit there and I'd think, yeah, good luck, buddy. Have fun with this because he's going to stop you. But yeah, he's given up a couple of breakaway goals in this one. Obviously, Kucherov, a phenomenal player, did a great job there, exploding up the center of the ice and scoring that goal. But if there's any weakness as far as, a certain spot where he's, susceptible to giving up a goal, I would actually say 5-hole more so than the glove hand. And I actually, Adam, I want to turn that around on you as well, because the Rangers, the first 2 games, it seemed like they really, made it part of their game plan to go high blocker on Vasilevskiy. And we saw him give up a couple of those in the first 2 games. Is that his weakness, or was that just kind of a fluke? I mean, any thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the night. We've seen throughout the season, we've seen different versions of Andrei Vasilevskiy. We've seen the Andrei Vasilevskiy that we all know, the greatest goaltender on the planet, the guy who has won the Conn Smythe and in years past Vezina Trophy. And then there's other nights where we see the Andrei Vasilevskiy that we saw early on in the Toronto Maple Leaf series, where he just doesn't look like he has it for whatever reason. I always like to equate it to the scene in Space Jam where all the NBA players get their talent sucked out.
Nice.
And it's more so kind of like that. But I don't think that's really something that has been a concern for us as Lightning fans and people that watch Andrei Vasilevskiy on a nightly basis. I just think it's one of those things where really the best way, and I've spoken about this pretty much almost in every playoff series, is that really what it comes down to is, and it doesn't matter where you shoot the puck on him. The thing he's always had trouble with has been traffic in front. I mean, you saw it early on in this series, and you saw it a little bit, and especially in the Maple Leaf series. And I think that's something that the Rangers did very well in the first 2 games, and something they kind of almost, I wouldn't say shy away from, but they kind of got away from in the previous game, and that was surprising given. And I was saying to myself afterwards, like anytime you win a game, obviously, John, it's a good thing. Anytime you could say you scored more goals than the opposing team in a hockey game is obviously a good thing. But I didn't think that the Rangers or the Lightning particularly played better than each other. I felt like, and maybe you had this sense as well, it kind of felt like we were an unlucky bounce or 2 away from going into overtime here and there, regardless of, if you I don't even view empty netters as actual goals in my book. I think the Lightning won this game 3-1 because it's such a cheap goal. But did you kind of feel that as well? Because I felt like at some point, especially halfway through the second period, whether you're looking at the score or not, I didn't feel like the Lightning really had a particularly tight grasp on this game. Did you feel like that as well?
See, I actually kind of felt the opposite. I felt like they kind of, for the most part, were in control of this game. And, with Vasilevskiy,
Yeah.
this is something that I mentioned on my most recent episode as well. He ends up stopping 34 or 35 shots. And, you might hear that stat and say, oh, man, if you didn't see the game, you might think, oh, the Andrei Vasilevskiy show. He must have been staying on his head. And, granted, he made some really nice saves here and there. But this wasn't like an Andrei Vasilevskiy steals the show kind of a game. I didn't think, at least. I thought for the most part, Tampa did a really nice job defensively. And yeah, the Rangers had 35 shots on goal, but for me at least, it didn't really feel like it. I thought for the Rangers, it was kind of quantity over quality. There weren't a ton of dangerous scoring opportunities for the most part in this game. And of course, the Rangers still kind of scuffling to do much of anything 5v5. They haven't scored an even strength goal in either of these last two games. So that's an issue. And we'll see if maybe they, end up shuffling the deck a little bit, going with some different line combinations. And, obviously we'll see if Strome and Chytil can play in the next game as well. That's going to be huge either way for the Rangers.
Yeah, definitely. Chytil. He's definitely a guy that Tampa fans have quickly learned the name of. But yeah, definitely a good effort by both teams, especially Andrei Vasilevskiy. And I bet, even though Vazzy won't admit it, but I think he drank his athletic greens before the game, John. And
He must have. Yes.
And
Only
funny
explanation.
thing enough, they're one of our sponsors. So, and the best thing, anybody could take these, whether you're Andrei Vasilevskiy, whether you're Dylan Strome, whether you're Mikhail Sergachev, or you're Keandre Miller. It's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, gluten, or you eat nothing like Nathan McKinnon, this is the powder just for you. I drink it every morning before I have anything else because it's great for gut health. It feels like, to me, I get that sudden natural burst of energy with my first cup of the morning, and it supports better sleep quality and recovery. Supports mental clarity. That's something you and I both need, especially with a lot of these late night playoff games. And the best part about it is that it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than that cold brew habit. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership of your health and pick the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So we'd like to thank, from Locked On New York Rangers as well as Locked On Lightning, we both like to thank you, John and I, for making us your first listen of the day, your first watch of the day if you're watching us on YouTube. And make sure and go ahead and follow and subscribe both shows on social media. Go ahead and follow the shows on our YouTube channels as well. And especially you Ranger fans, go ahead and please keep commenting on the videos, because I think, as much as I love hearing back from my listeners, I just think the hatred and the mockery, the fake mockery, it sustains me, John. I really love it. I really love it. I live for it almost at this point. So we're talking about the next game. And it's always the mantra, just do your job, go in there. And the Rangers are a little banged up. You got Dylan Strome out of the lineup, as well as a couple of other guys. And I believe it was Lindgren that was also banged up in the last game as well. What can you say about the current status of those guys?
Well, with Lindgren, I mean, he's been banged up the entire playoffs, and
Yeah.
he's pretty much been playing hurt. It feels like every game he has to, not every game, but a lot of the games in the second and third rounds here, he's had to come out of, for at least a couple of minutes, and then he just kind of guts it out and goes back out there. I mean, the one game, he couldn't even put any weight on his one leg, and I think he only missed about 5 minutes, jumped back out there and seemed good to go. As far as Ryan Strome is concerned, he tried to give it a go last night. He was out there during, the skate around before the game, and, was really testing himself, trying to skate hard, and just wasn't able to go. And I think, on one hand, you'd love to see these guys gut it out if they can, but Ryan Strome, he's tough. He'd be out there if he could be. And I don't think you want a situation where, Strome plays the first 5 minutes and then he can't go the rest of the game, and now you're down a man the entire game. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happened there. And then, Barclay Goodrow, he's been playing through an injury as well. And unfortunately, this one would really hurt the Rangers if Filip is not able to go in Game 5 and or the rest of the series, because as you've seen, Adam, you just mentioned a second ago that Tampa fans, general hockey fans, starting to know a little bit about Filip. He's been the sniper on that kid line throughout this playoff run here. So that would be a killer to not have him. If the Rangers have to go without Chytil and Ryan Strome, that's your third and second line center, respectively. Now, the good news for the Rangers is they've got some other guys they can plug into center. If you have to be without those guys, you could slide Andrew Kopp from right wing over to center. Barclay Goodrow, as you know, Adam, he's a Swiss Army knife. He can play any line, any position. So you could put him maybe at like third line center. But obviously, you're going to be losing a little bit of firepower if you have to go without one or both of those guys. And at this point, it sounds like Gallant mentioned that they're both going to be game time decisions. Even if he did know whether they're going to play or not, I doubt very much that he would reveal that, because there's no benefit to tipping your hand to Tampa and allowing them to game plan, or, whatever it might be. But yeah, obviously at this point, if you're a Ranger fan, all you can do is basically just keep your fingers crossed that those two guys are going to be out there, or at least one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from experience over the last 2 years, it is tough when you have guys that are not only out of the lineup for uncertain amount of times, and it's very hard for a coach to game plan around that. But at the same time, these are guys that, whether no matter how big or small, make contributions towards the success of your team. And I could say the same thing. Obviously the big story surrounding the Lightning is Brayden Point. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Brayden Point. He may, if the Lightning do advance to the Stanley Cup final and play Colorado, he might be back. I've also heard some things, and maybe this might be just pure optimism from my point of view as well. And I kind of agree with this kind of train of thought. I think if it goes to a game 7, he's well enough to play, we might see him then. But yeah, it's whenever you lose a player, whether you're talking about Brayden Point, Barclay Goodrow, a guy like Filip, who, like I said, has really established himself as public enemy number 1 for Tampa fans. It's difficult, but that's what the playoffs are all about, John. The playoffs are about, battling through the injuries. We've heard all the stories of guys raising the cup with dislocated shoulders, skating around with torn ligaments in their knees. And that's what makes it so special. And the thing that really stuck out to me, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this on the show, that I just thought of. What was so special to me last game was Frank Vatrano fighting against Brandon Hagel. And how surprised were you about those two guys dropping the gloves?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just about to ask you the same thing, man. We got to talk about the fight night there. Not fight night. It was only one fight, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, a little bit surprised. I mean, you could kind of see it coming, though. The play had been blown dead, and Hagel, not like a vicious cross check or anything, but he definitely put his stick into Vatrano's back a little bit. Vatrano took exception, kind of shoved him, and they're still kind of jawing and looking at each other, and nobody's backing down. And next thing you know, off come the gloves. It's a little surprising, but by that same token, I wouldn't say that I was like floored by it. Vatrano, he came over to the Rangers at the trade deadline. So I feel like in some ways, we're, as Ranger fans, we're all still kind of getting to know him a little bit. But, the regular season games that he played with the Rangers and the postseason as well, he is somebody that definitely plays a little bit of feistiness out there. He's not going to take any nonsense from anybody. I don't think he's somebody that necessarily goes looking for trouble, but probably won't shy away from it either. So, and at that point in the game, also, you're down 2-0, and, every now and then you need some kind of a spark, whatever it might be, a big hit, a fight, whatever it takes to get your team going a little bit. I think that's maybe what he was trying to do. Don't know how well it really worked, but, yeah, I mean, I wasn't completely shocked by it, but, kudos to Vatrano for doing what he's got to do there to try to get the Rangers rolling a little bit. How about you, man? Were you surprised to see the fight there? It kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was surprised just because Hagel, his primary role, even though it really hasn't happened thus yet, he's had a little bit of a go of it since coming over from the Chicago Blackhawks, and all expectations of that after the Lightning gave up 2 very young players who are already have shown that they can play at the NHL level in Bo Kachuk and Taylor Radish. So bringing over Brandon Hagel to come over and just say, hey, don't worry about anything else. All you need to do is score. And then you goes ahead and he fights Frank Vatrano, who Lightning fans, we are very familiar with who Frank Vatrano is, playing for the Panthers, playing in the same division of last couple of years. So we know who he is. We know what he's capable of. I am surprised, though, that those two dropped it. I think a lot of people, if you had the prop bet on Reeves and Maroon fighting first in the series, you were very disappointed when you heard they dropped the gloves, but it wasn't the guys that you wanted. But I think that really you're right. It was Vatrano just trying to start things going for his team, and that sometimes that's all it takes. We've seen it here and there throughout the playoffs, not only from our respective teams, but we've seen over the years from teams, and sometimes that's what it takes to win a championship. But yeah, looking towards to game 5. Now, I think, at least in my mind, hopefully, just because so the Lightning could go out there, just play their game and focus. I think at this point in the series, we've gotten a lot of the big time physicality out of our system, and I think we're really going to start to see the nitty gritty hockey things. And what I mean by that is we're going to start seeing the games between the games. We're going to see the little things along the boards. We're going to see those kind of moments where play behind the net, the neutral zone play, which has been a huge thing, a huge factor all series long. I think we're done with the physical play. I think both teams have figured it out. I think the refs have done a very good job of keeping both these teams in line. I think we're going to see somewhat of a high scoring game. I think we're going to see maybe a 4-3 game. We might see a 4-2 game, something around that. I think if you have the over under for 5.5, I think you definitely want to bet the over on this, John. What are you thinking about for game 5?
Well, first of all, let me just kind of echo your sentiments there, Adam, because it's so easy and we've both done it. I mean, everybody who watches hockey has done it one time or another. But yeah, I think to your point there, I think the refs have done a pretty good job in this series, not letting things get out of control. It's the playoffs. It's the Eastern Conference Final. You're always going to get a little bit of chippiness, a little bit of extracurriculars after the play. But again, nothing like too wild where, that kind of stuff is overshadowing the actual hockey game. So props to the refs, excuse me, for maintaining control throughout this series, at least so far. And, let's let everybody know about Built Bar, and then I'll come back to game 5 here, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts there as far as how this one might shake out. But we definitely got to let everybody know about Built Bar. Do you love a chewy, chocolatey brownie? What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? So good. What if I told you that you can have all that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein? You are in luck because caramel brownie bars are available at built.com right now, and you got to act fast because they are a fan favorite. Forget about dessert. These are better than dessert. And the best part, caramel brownie bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. With Built, you don't have to sacrifice tasty for healthy. You can have both. And all of Built's bars, there we go, are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. With Built, tasty is the new healthy. Go to Built.com to get your box of caramel brownie bars right now. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And yeah, Adam, I think game 5, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, man. I mean, I suppose there will still be some physicality. I don't think we're going to see anybody drop the gloves. We talked about this when we did our post-game show after game 1. If there's going to be feistiness and fights in a playoff series, especially as you get deeper into the playoffs, usually earlier in the series is when it's going to happen, games 2 and 3 maybe, and in this case, game 4. But at this point, you can't risk taking an instigator penalty or something stupid and putting your team in a bad situation and, maybe having your team shorthanded and giving up a goal that costs you the series and your season. So I don't think we're going to see any more gloves being dropped. If it does happen, maybe in the first couple minutes of game 5, but I wouldn't even bet on that. I think this is kind of we're at a spot in this series where these players are going to play hockey and they're just going to let, the team that plays better end up winning this series. I don't think this has been like an overly nasty series. So I think at this point, they're just going to go out there and do what they do. And, may the best team win kind of a thing. And as far as it being a high scoring game, I had 3-2 Rangers. I could see maybe 4-3. But it's just with those two goalies, man. It's hard for me to bet on them giving up a ton of goals. You know how it is. So I would say probably we're looking at 3-2 Rangers. Could be one of those games where, the Rangers go up 2-0. Tampa closes at 2-1, 3-1 Rangers, back down to 3-2. One of those kinds of games where the Rangers are just barely hanging on and making us Ranger fans all lose our collective minds at the end of the game. But how about you, man? Any thoughts on this game 5? Final prediction, somebody to score a goal, and any certain way that you see this shaking out here?
Really what I'm looking for from this game, and I think the rest of the series, is because it seems at certain times that the Lightning get away from what they're good at. I've spoken about it before with you as well as just on the show in general. And I think that the Lightning, especially from game 4, have realized that they need to do a better job of populating the area in front of Igor Shesterkin, whether it results in goals or not. They know that for any goaltender, that will give them fits, especially early on. You gotta create high levels of traffic while just throwing the puck on net and kind of let it self ping pong around. The Lightning have done a good job most times throughout this playoff run of doing that to opposing goaltenders. But I have to say though, they have not faced a goaltender this good as Igor Shesterkin is, and so that definitely there lies the challenge. I think that we're gonna see Nikita Kucherov kind of just do his thing once again. Just kind of hold on to the puck, just kind of see who's open, and last minute either shoot or pass. I would prefer that he shoots that puck a little bit early on. I would expect that you're going to see a lot more involvement out of the blue line. They did a better job in games 3 and 4, but I think we're definitely going to see a lot more involvement out of guys like Eric Chernak and Jan Ruda and those names. I mean, we've seen Victor Hedman. He's involved almost on every single play, especially when this team sets up. I think the one guy that you're going to see a big game out of, other than Steven Stamkos and some of the names I've already spoken about, is Corey Perry. He's been on a roll this entire playoffs. He's really been the backbone of the leadership when it comes on the ice. Obviously, you have the big names, and Steven Stamkos is the captain, but really Corey Perry has solidified himself, and only in his first year as one of the top leaders on this team. And you kind of see it not only on the bench but on the ice. When he's on the ice, everybody just gives him a glance, and they already know what's up. So I think really you're going to see a lot of chances for Corey Perry early on, and you're going to see him maybe put 1 or 2 in the back of the net, whether it be as a goal or as an assist as well.
Fair enough. And it's funny, I was actually going to ask you, is one final question that I wanted to get to here, and it's actually one of my favorite questions to ask, anytime we do these crossover episodes, whether it's with you or one of the other awesome Locked On hosts out there. But I always like to ask people if there's like a certain unsung hero, for their team's season. And, obviously we're in the playoffs here, Adam. Is there anybody in game 3 and 4 for you on Tampa that really kind of stood out that maybe isn't getting, as much attention as perhaps he should?
I think he's getting a lot of attention, but I think the obvious choice here, and I think both nation would collectively agree with me. Nick Paul. Nick Paul has just absolutely shocked the world since coming over from Ottawa at the trade deadline. Some might say it was a steal, and some might say that this is really should have been if Julian Brees-Boss wins GM of the year. This will be the trade that we look back on and say, yep, that was the reason why. Nick Paul has really just from day one been able to slide into this lineup and do everything that was asked of him. I actually kind of compare him to a bigger version of Barclay Goodrow. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk this season about possibly replicating the production of that third line that Tampa had over the last 3 years. And we all know, John, especially you and I, that it is very hard, especially at the high level that those 3 guys played at the last 2 years. That's almost next to impossible. But Nick Paul has done a fantastic job at times, really almost playing to all the strengths of all those guys that you saw on that team last year. And he's really, especially alongside Ross Colton, has done a fantastic job on that third line. John Cooper has felt free to move him down this lineup. He's currently on the second line with Steven Stamkos. So that has really shown you how valuable he's been to this team and how clutch he has really been. Especially, everybody remembers that 2-goal performance in game 7 of the first round against Toronto. So yeah, Nick Paul. And I'm going to throw that question back to you. Is there anybody on this Rangers team that has really been, not getting as their due credit?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ranger fans are aware of this guy, but certainly on a national level, not too many people really take that much notice. I'm going to go with Tyler Mott. He actually had to miss a good chunk of the games in the playoffs, but what a nice under-the-radar pickup by Chris Drury at the trade deadline. So you throw out a trade deadline acquisition, and I'm doing the same thing here. But he's just a buzzsaw, man. He's one of those guys that plays every shift like it's his last. I thought he was really good in last night's game, and there's not too many Rangers that I would necessarily say that about. It's interesting because I thought he created about as much offense and as many chances as just about any Ranger on the ice, which on one hand, that's great for Tyler Mott. On the other hand, when you've got a team of, Panarin and Mika and Kreider and Fox, you probably need a little bit more from those guys. But Mott's been great, and he's been a huge part of the Ranger penalty kill as well. As you know, Adam, Tampa's got no shortage of stars and guys that can create offense and put the puck in the net. And so I think the Rangers have done a pretty good job against their power play overall. And Tyler Mott, obviously, playing a big role in that. So I would go with Tyler Mott as kind of the unsung hero.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I think he's one of those guys because Tampa have a certain a number of guys on their team as well that they're not necessarily going to light up the stat sheet every night, but you're going to know that you're going to feel their presence on the ice. I kind of look at Mod as somewhat in a similar way to Anthony Cirelli. Anthony Cirelli has he's one of those guys that he's been struggling to really put up the points here and there, but I think he's been doing a really good job just letting his presence be felt, and that's something that as especially with the amount of with the variety of players that we have here in Tampa, I could definitely admire the body of work that Mod has done throughout the series. Unfortunately, it's against my team, but you know what, occupational hazard, I guess. But so yeah, I'm excited to see how this series goes because I just feel like just when we know we what's going to happen, I just feel like we see another layer of the onion be peeled off with both our teams, and I'm really excited to see really how it all shakes down. I think that regardless of who wins tonight, because we are filming this Wednesday, so this is coming out Thursday. So who films tonight, who wins tonight? I really think that the story hasn't been written yet. I think really this is going to go to 7. I think we're going to end this series in New York, and it's going to be an absolute banger of an ending.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I think one way or another, this probably ends up going 7, and this series has been everything we expected and more. Just two excellent teams going at it, and regardless of what happens, it's been an amazing run for the Rangers, and it's great that they're going toe to toe with the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. I want more than anything for the Rangers to win this series, but regardless of what happens, this is obviously a very positive experience for this team going forward. But fingers crossed that they can just kind of hold serve at home in Madison Square Garden and once again take the upper hand in this series here.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure my Locked On NHL co-host Chris Masilli, who's also the host of Locked On Avalanche, is probably sitting there just licking his chops, getting ready for these two teams to beat up more on each other and just wait for whoever limps into the Stanley Cup final. But
I'm jealous of him, man. He gets to just kick back and relax and watch these teams beat each other up. He's on easy street right now.
Yeah, I'm almost worried, about what he's going to say to either one of us because Chris won't hold back, man. Chris won't hold back. So get ready for that. But why don't you tell everybody, especially my listeners, where you could find your show?
Yeah, so the show, you can find this anywhere you are either watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. It is on that same platform. And as far as where to find the show on social media, on Twitter, at LO_NY_Rangers. And you can also follow me on there at JChick17. And how about you, Adam, man? Where can they find you and your show?
You can find the show anywhere if it's on audio, anywhere audio platforms are distributed. And if you're watching us, please go ahead and follow us and subscribe to the show on YouTube and give the show a follow on our social media platforms at LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. You can follow me at Danky Dank, DENKY, D8NK. Locked On Lightning listeners, please go ahead and give John some flack because, I feel go ahead and do it. Let him know that you are listening, that you're not going to stand for this absolute slanderous talk that some of his fans are talking about our Lightning. So, John, always a blast having these. I feel like it's come full circle ever since you kind of brought me into the Locked On family. I feel like this is a day that's been coming for a long time now, and it's finally coming full circle.
I was happy to do it, man. We had some good times with NHL.com, MLB.com. I knew you'd do a great job with this. And it's crazy because I've been meaning to talk to you about this too. But I remember last season we did a crossover. The Rangers were kind of scuffling a little bit. And I made the joke like, oh, man, we'll do this again in the Eastern Conference Final. And here we are. It's 1 year later. And we're 2-2 in the Eastern Conference Final. Pretty crazy stuff.
It's pretty crazy that the New York kid who hosts the Lightning show is in three years in a row in the conference finals is playing New York teams.
Yep. How about it, man? Wild
stuff. We'll have to do it after the series for a recap, and may the best team win.
Absolutely. Sounds good, man. We'll talk soon.